tuning in to the second episode of Theatre Now, with me, your host, Anam Sethi. Today's topic is student leadership in theatre, as we will provide you with student perspectives on important topics such as acting, directing, playwriting, auditioning, and much more. Both my guests today are seniors at Mount Holyoke College. My first guest, Nicole, is a theatre arts major and an art studio minor with a concentration in acting, painting, and expressions. My second guest, Bryna Turner, is also a theatre arts major and an English minor. Apart from acting, her main focus is directing, playwriting, and kitten rescuing. Welcome, Bryna, Nicole. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's jump right in. Did you come to Mount Holyoke hoping to major in theatre, or did something happen while you were at college that swayed you towards the major?
Well, I did actually want to major in theater, and I auditioned for different conservatories, but it didn't really work out that way, so I was a little nervous about how the department would be. I was worried it wasn't going to be challenging enough, and it turned out to be very challenging. So I did end up being a theater major like I hoped I would, so. Yeah.
What about you, Bryna?
I came into Mount Holyoke knowing that I liked theater, that I had done a lot of theater in high school, but I kind of didn't know what I was going to do. I was probably going to be an English major, but I thought I would audition and just see how it went. I thought I'd probably audition for all the plays my first year, and if by the end of my first year I wasn't being cast, I would give up on the whole thing. But I was cast in the first show I auditioned for, and then I sort of got sucked into the whirlpool that is Rook Theater.
Awesome. So could you guys tell me a bit about some classes that you've taken that have really influenced you or helped you out one way or the other in your career as like actors or directors?
Well, we both took acting and directing, and that's an acting one is always a good class to take if you want to do theater. But the acting and directing class was something that really inspired me to keep going with it because we had a lot of hands-on experience kind of making our own performances. And we did these cool things called table pieces, actually.
Definitely.
And table pieces are very interesting. I need your help to explain this, Bryna.
Okay. This was part of, we learn about it in acting and directing, but then there was a whole course we took dedicated to only table pieces. That was Advanced Performance Workshop. And the idea of a table piece is basically any piece of theater that you can make only having a table. If you have a table in your room, you can make theater. So the idea is that the frame is very small. The whole stage is just a tabletop. And so it sort of gets you to understand that anything can be theatrical, like a hand creeping across a table can be an entire play.
And how it can be framed by light in a certain way, or just the way that you set up the table, sound. And then as you continue on, your frame gets larger and larger and more complex. And you also have different elements that you have to incorporate into each table piece. It's different every time. So one of them can be 10 seconds of violence with a person entering and exiting, and then lights going off. And those have to be your three elements you have to work with, and you can make up anything you want.
And we learned this with Roger Babb, who's a professor of acting and directing at Mount Holyoke. He directs not every show, half of the shows.
Half of the shows in the department. Yeah.
And he always gives us crazy elements, like, you need a volcano. And, you only have a tabletop. I don't know what a volcano, how do you make a volcano on a tabletop? So it's always really interesting.
That's very cool. So now I know both of you are actors as well, but Bryna, you specifically have kind of branched off into the world of directing. Last semester you directed Eugene Ionesco's Jack or The Submission. So could you tell us a bit more about your process? How did you branch off to directing and how it worked out for you?
Definitely. I kind of knew that I wanted to do something else starting my sophomore year. I think my sophomore year I had been in 6 productions that year, and I kind of had this feeling. I was like, okay, so acting. I've done that a little bit. And so I was like, by my senior year, I want to do something new. and I want another challenge, something really big. And so I started asking around, like, how do you do a senior project? You know, I had seen a senior project done, but it was like it was a clown show in the Black Box of Brooke. Did you see that? It was great.
No, I did not.
Annie Amberg did My Own 2 Feet. It was a one-woman clown show. It was like fantastic theater. And I thought, like, okay, I want to do something like Annie Amberg. I want to be Annie Amberg. And so I started asking about that, and then I said, like, I want to direct something. And everyone was like, well, you know, we kind of don't let students direct, but maybe we will. And so I took Roger's advanced performance workshop, and he really helped me. I was able to direct, and every time we usually rotated directors, but he said, you know, Bryna's training to do something, so she's going to direct a lot, and he let me bring in text. I brought in a different Ionesco play. I brought in The Lesson, and we all took apart The Lesson and tried to do that, and then, you know, I realized, it's like, okay, maybe The Lesson is too dark. Also, it only has 3 actors. That doesn't seem fair for a main stage show. And so I found Jack or the submission, and I submitted that to the department, and they approved it, and let me have a go at it.
That's great. So the one thing that I would really talk to you about is giving advice to someone who wants to do the same thing. If there's a student out there who wants to take their show to the main stage or work with their department, rather than doing something smaller with like a student group, etc., what advice would you give them? How would someone approach that idea?
I think the main thing is just planning ahead.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't have been able to do it had I not started my sophomore year. At the very end of my sophomore year, I started asking all the questions, and I planted the idea, and then for me, it worked out because I planted the idea, and everyone in the department, I was like, so, you know, how does this work? Remember that I want this. And then it coincided with Brooke's maternity leave, and they were like, actually, we do need someone. And so, like, that was a lucky opportunity for me. But the department now has instituted a possible way for students to do it they have to submit a proposal now. I think they were just due for juniors, and they can go up in the spring of their senior year.
So Nicole, you yourself also have acted in a lot of plays like Bryna. Yes. In fact, you've been consistently acting in plays since your first semester at Mount Holyoke. So for someone who's trying to pursue acting, what kind of advice would you give them? How do you deal with the stresses of being an actor and going to school simultaneously?
Well, I think you have to really like performing, because you need the motivation to continue auditioning even when you don't get a part. I actually didn't get into the first 3 shows that I auditioned for, and I just kept persisting, because if you want to get your foot in the door, then you have to make friends, and you just have to be patient, and hopefully your time will come. And luckily I was able to get into a fantastic show with a really wonderful cast, and that really made me want to continue doing it. And the director was fabulous, and when all of the elements come together when you're in a show, it really makes you want to go for it, I guess. And I would say, don't be afraid to embarrass yourself. It's better to, go 110% and be completely ridiculous sometimes. Definitely. And kind of show them all you have. Because if you hold back, then you're not showing everyone everything that you've got. And I think that's what I missed the first couple of times I tried to get in. I think I was a little shy and a little nervous. And I had friends, luckily, that were already in the department that just kind of gave me tips on what to do. And I don't know. I love acting, and so for me, I will always push to try and get there somehow. And if that means making friends or not getting the part a couple times and doing wardrobe or tech or something backstage, you learn a lot that way, and then you learn to make friends that are performers, and eventually you get to where you want to be. So
great. So as someone who's repeatedly auditioned in their life, what are some of the do's and don'ts of auditioning?
Well, Bryna and I were actually talking about this yesterday. There are lots of do's and don'ts. I would say don't psych yourself out too much, because that never helps, ever.
Definitely.
It's actually, I think, psychologically proven that if you admit that you're nervous, then you have less nervousness. Say, like, I'm nervous, I'm going to go in on this audition, I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to make a fool out of myself. I'm just going to do it. Understanding the text.
That's what
it's very important.
Yeah, we talked about this, and I was saying the thing that I look for when I'm casting is just that someone understands the text, that they get when it's funny, and they get when they have a basic instinct to bring it up, but not to stay there, to come back down. You can't.
Right, because you can't always be like, oh.
Like 110% is great, really but if you yell at me for 5 minutes, it's just as boring as if you had said nothing.
Right.
So I think you just look for those things, instincts. I don't mind that people are nervous. I don't mind that hands are shaking. I'm someone, I've hyperventilated in an audition. I've had stomach spasms. I understand nervousness, and that doesn't put me off from an actor.
Yeah, use your audition as a chance for you to really show them. If you want to start over again, can you just say, "Excuse me, I just need to take a moment."
Definitely. Take a deep breath.
I don't know if that's really the case in professional theater. Can I have a moment? Can I just turn around for a second?
A college bubble, but
yeah,
we get it.
Yeah.
Right. So Bryna, like you were just talking, you've been behind the table. You've indulged in some casting. And yesterday we were having a conversation. You were telling me about what you look for in an actor and what puts you off. So could you repeat that? Could you let us know what you look for or what's good when you see someone audition?
Definitely. I mean, like I said, just that they get it, that they have a basic understanding. And it's something that I like to do that I learned from Roger, is that when someone comes into audition, I like to have them read the part that they were just practicing outside in the lobby, and then have them switch with their partner. So they read a part that they didn't just read 100,000 times because they thought they were only going to read this part, and then, be like, now you're playing actor B. So just sort of throw them off that game, because sometimes it's what they didn't expect that they're better at, and also they've had the chance to hear that part a lot, and they can. We were talking about this yesterday.
Yeah.
That you can often, as an actor, hear what someone else is doing wrong. You can't hear what you're doing wrong because you're too in your head, but you're like, that line is weird when they say it that way. And so you give someone the chance to do it their own way.
And you also said acting on your basic instincts, and sometimes the best performances are the one where you're kind of caught off guard, and so you just have to go with it. And so sometimes it helps to switch around.
Definitely. And we tried, and we had a lot of fun with Jack auditions. We were like, and now there's a chair, act with a chair. It was our first time. I had Nicole sit in on the casting process as well, and so we had never cast a play before, so we were like, let's make auditions fun. Yeah. So we just kept trying to kind of throw people off and see where people's instincts were, and not just that they read it and kind of.
Yeah. How much did they play with what you gave them?
How much could they go on the spot and make something up? See what everyone's imagination was like.
That's interesting. So now, auditioning is super scary, but there's also another part of acting which is just as scary, which is going up on stage. And stage fright is something I think all actors experience, especially the first time, your first production, and you go up on stage and you see the audience and you get scared. What are some things you guys do to avoid stage fright or to deal with it in that moment?
I mean, I think the first moment you go out on stage, you can't really help but be nervous because the audience is there, and you're just thinking, oh my gosh, okay, I better not mess up. But I think once and you actually said this, once you know that the audience kind of trusts you, or you can trust them, then it feels like a little more of a safer space, and it's more of a rehearsal where you really have to be on your toes almost.
Yeah.
And also when you have a cast that you really trust.
Right. That's for me. I realized that my stage fright went down a lot as an actor once I was working with people that I trusted. Like when I was on stage with Nicole and Hey Young, other actors in our department. When I was on stage with them, I realized that I wasn't afraid. They were great. I didn't have to do anything. When you're on stage with someone who's fantastic, you just have to be there. You just have to say lines that make the audience look at them again. It's the Nicole show. I can be a part of the Nicole show. I love the Nicole show. Why wouldn't I be a part of the Nicole show? That's not scary. Yeah. When you really appreciate the people you're working with, it's not scary anymore.
That's good. That's really good. You know, yesterday when you guys were telling me this, it was very interesting to hear you talk about bouncing that energy off each other.
Yeah.
If everybody is in everybody else's show, it's just going to be a great show at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Now, let's talk a bit about plays or playwrights that have influenced you throughout your career. Within the last 4 years, what are some productions you've seen or some plays you've read that have really influenced the way you act, the way you write, and the way you think on stage? It's a big
Huge
question.
question.
Take a deep breath.
Feels like a test.
Yeah, I'm grading you on this.
Yeah, I know. It's funny because I was thinking about this question a lot, and I think what's really great about the sort of phase that we're in with theater, we know all the vocabulary now, we have a basic understanding of history, but we're still really excited by a lot of things. At least I find that I'm a great audience member. I think things are great. Like, I know a lot about theater, so I can understand when things are bad, and I don't like things that are bad, but I get really excited by things that are new to me, and I'm not jaded yet. I'm still very much a new audience member. I'm like, well, that was genius. Like, I just saw Brooke O'Hara, who's a director at our school, is also one of the founders of Two-Headed Calf, and she just put up You, My Mother, a chamber opera project, it had 2 sections, which were texts written by 2 different playwrights, and then she had 2 different musicians score them. And I watched it, and one of the texts was written by Kristen Cosmas, who wrote Hello Failure, which was a play that actually all 3 of us were in at Mount Holyoke. And I love Kristen Cosmas' writing, and so I just watched it, and I had a notebook out, and I was the only person like scribbling things down. I was like, that's fantastic, like that blew my mind. And then 3 weeks later, I was in a playwriting class, and we just had to start writing a play, and I wrote an opera. And I was like, oh, this isn't at all coming from anywhere. But I think everything right now kind of influences us and takes us somewhere new.
What about you, Nicole? Something you've seen that really sticks in your head, or you always go back to every time you're stuck in a moment? Anything?
Well, we did the show Whirligig our junior year, and it's a play written by Matt Gwellman, and he used to write poetry, and I think he still does, and his plays are very poetic and crazy and musical all at the same time, and Whirligig was kind of a play of words and a play on words, and I actually took playwriting the time I was doing that play, so his work really influenced mine, and I would just have characters yelling random things, and nothing really made any sense, and I just loved that show so much because it was so absurd and ridiculous, and I think a lot of that is because we happen to actually study a lot of absurd plays in our theater department, which is something that I think is very unique about Mount Holyoke College theater department. We study a lot about Brecht and the crazy guy, Artaud.
You said a lot about Artaud.
And I think that has really influenced my work. I like experimental stuff, but classic stuff kind of seems stuffy to me now that I've had a taste of the absurd.
Definitely. I was thinking about this. I feel like we go through a phase in the Mount Holyoke Theater Department where you realize you're taught everything that like disrupts theater, and so there's a phase where you're like, I only want to see plays with like a light bulb on a table, like that's theater. And then you sort of be like, well, that's also crazy. Right. And so you're like, I want plays where people are also speaking in beautiful poetry with a light bulb on a table. And then you go through, and then like I feel like I'm finally reaching a point. I just saw a play, Tribes at Barrow Street. I'm forgetting the name of the playwright, but
That's okay.
But it was, it was a narrative play, and I was like, how did that affect me? Narrative drama can still affect me. It was like so great. Suddenly I was like, I want to write a narrative play, which is funny because that's exactly where I started. It's taken me through all these steps of wanting to only look at light bulbs, and now I feel like I can write a narrative play maybe one day.
So what about a production that you recently saw, or even something that you might have seen in the past but still sticks with you, that made you rethink theater? And Bryna, this is your question, so I'll give you credit for it.
Bryna.
Well, Bryna.
We were talking about this yesterday, and it wasn't a play that I saw, but in high school, when the first time I was assigned to do a report on absurdist theater, I was like, oh, I don't know what this is. I went to Google, and I was like, absurdist theater. And the first thing that popped up was Waiting for Godot, and I was like, our library won't have Waiting for Godot. What is that? And I went to the library, and there it was. And my friend who was doing the project with me was like, I don't know what this is. Like, here, you be Vladimir, I'll be Estragon. And we read through it, and we couldn't stop. We were like, this is so weird and funny. And so I was like, okay, the bell rang, and I was like, come to my house after school, and we'll read this play. And so we're reading the play in my kitchen, and we're laughing hysterically, and my mom is like, what is so funny? And I say, Waiting for Godot. And she says, like, that's the worst play I've ever read. Like, that play sucks. And I was like, but it's so funny. And she's like, it's so depressing. And I was like, I don't understand. And it just, ever since that moment when I found that play, I was like, it could be different. I remember I presented it to my high school. I was like, could we do this play? And they're like, no one will see that play, Bryna. That is so weird. And then I came to Mount Holyoke, and everyone was like, oh, absurdist theater, Waiting for Godot. And I was like, oh, okay.
What about you, Nicole? Anything you've seen that has made you rethink theater? Or question it in any way?
I know that I said whirligig yesterday, and that definitely made me rethink theater. But now that I remember it, Bryna and former Mount Holyoke graduate Jane Bradley did a piece called The Brain Piece, which was, they researched all these NPR tapes of these people talking about
BBC,
okay, NPR, wrong. No, and they made a piece with Roger, just from these BBC tapes about
neuroscience. Yeah, it was
psychology.
BBC podcast about neuroscience.
It was kooky and crazy. I loved it so much. Just because there's so much physical comedy as well as this kind of, you created this world out of these kind of ridiculous tapes of these interviews with these very strange people that have these very strange disorders. And I think there's this one character that you played, if you could elaborate. I don't really remember his name. He was a Scottish guy. And
Tommy McHugh.
And his problem was that he saw colors all the time because of something in his brain.
Yeah, he had 2 strokes within minutes of each other. And after that, he just saw images constantly. It was like a constant output of images in his brain. He describes it like a volcano with these bubbles, and the bubbles are popping, and they're filled with thousands of images, and then they pop, and they're filled with thousands of images. And so he covered his entire house in paint. He just couldn't stop creating. And so we took an interview with him, and this really very strange interviewer, just very smarmy and kind of awful. And so we took the voices. We only had the voices, and we embodied them, and so we mimicked the voices as close to reality as we could, and then we sort of exaggerated them and pushed them further and gave them all these weird movements and
then it was just like, it was this story of something that actually happened, but then it became this kind of fictional world of this man, like this interviewer, and how is this actually real? And it was so theatrical and wonderful, and I think when you're completely taken away to another place, I think that's really great theater, the stuff that really sticks with you, that makes you think. Yeah.
Great. So both of you are actually collaborating on something right now. Bryna, you're directing a play called Uncommon Women, based off of Wendy Wasserstein's original play, Uncommon Women and Others, a play about the lives of Mount Holyoke College women in the late 60s, early 70s. So where did that idea come from, and how did it come into being?
Well, you've done an episode on this. It's the year of Wendy Wasserstein on campus. And so I guess this idea just sort of started floating around my head that we're going to put on Wendy Wasserstein's version of Mount Holyoke at Mount Holyoke, but it's not really, it doesn't feel like Mount Holyoke in 2012. Right. It doesn't feel like a Mount Holyoke that I really know. Even though there are definitely things that people could connect to, there are definitely things in that play that are wonderful. I still felt like by putting it on at Mount Holyoke, you're saying something about this still being Mount Holyoke, and I felt like it wasn't our Mount Holyoke, and I would like to see a play about our Mount Holyoke. And so I started trying to write a play about our Mount Holyoke, which is very difficult, I discovered. And so
It's funny.
so partway through the process, my advisor, Erica Rundle, is also part of the Wendy Wasserstein committee. And she said, you know, like, you're going to put this play on. And I was like, what? I don't know. And she was like, yeah, you're going to put it on after Uncommon Women and Others. And I was like, that is something. and she was like, yeah, I need your script, you know, by the time spring semester starts. And so I had like 30 pages, and I was like, this is the script, and it was a beginning and an end, and there was no middle, and I was like, we'll put it on, you know. I was like, let's go. And so I cast it with this like play with no middle, and then throughout our first couple rehearsals were just, I would bring in the script, and we read through Wendy Wasserstein's script, because you can't understand my play without knowing Wendy Wasserstein's play. It's directly in response to her play. It's sort of a deconstruction of her play. So we read through that, and that took 2 hours, and then we took a break, and then we read through my play, which took half an hour. And then I said, you know, what are your thoughts? What is it missing? Help me. And everyone had really great comments, and I took this list of notes, and I came back, and our next rehearsal I had like a new play, and I was like, this is the play, you know, like, help me. And then I took a list of notes, and then I had everyone write, actually.
Yeah, you had everyone write scenes, do a little exercise of what they thought.
Definitely, and that was really helpful to see how other people would imagine the voices of these characters, because how can one person write the experience of Mount Holyoke? That's everyone's experience. So it was really nice to have a room full of people suddenly really dedicated to this project that started out as this weird idea in my head. I was like, okay, now we're all invested. Yeah. I've tracked you. Like, you must commit to this just like I must. And so you didn't know that was the idea.
No.
And so now it's a 54-page script, and there's a middle, and we're rehearsing it, and it's fun.
It is fun.
Great. So for somebody who wants to come watch this, how would they do that?
Well, you cannot see our show unless you see the department's production of Wendy Wasserstein's Uncommon Women and Others.
Definitely.
And you don't have to see it on the same night.
Right.
Alex, how does it work?
All right. Mount Holyoke is putting on Uncommon Women and Others, which is running 2 weekends. You know the dates.
I do. April 19th to April 22nd, and then April 26th to April 28th.
And we're going on that second weekend after that production. So inside your program to Uncommon Women and Others, hopefully this is in theory right now, there will be a program to our play, which is your ticket to our play. So when you go to Uncommon Women and Others, you'll get a ticket to Uncommon Women. And you can save it from the first weekend and come back the second weekend, or you can marathon it and see all Wendy Wasserstein plays all the time, and that means our show is going up at 11 p.m. on that Thursday and Friday, and then at 5 p.m. on that Saturday. And if you can't make it to Uncommon Women and Others, you can be on a wait list.
All right, great. Well, thank you for coming to my show. This was really exciting to learn about how students are actually taking leadership and going ahead and acting and directing and writing and making it out there. For anybody who wants to see Bryna Turner's Uncommon Women starring Nicole Guild, go ahead and watch Brooke O'Hara's Uncommon Women and Others, April 19th to the 22nd and April 26th to the 28th at Rook Theatre, Mount Holyoke College. Bryna's show will go on the second weekend, which is the 26th to the 28th of April. Please save your programs and hold on to your tickets if you want to get into the show. For more information, call 413-538-2406 or email rookboxoffice@gmail.com. Thank you and have a great day.